Nothing really screams country music than a guy in Los Angeles leasing a Japanese SUV, all hopped up on beet juice and oat milk lattes. But that doesn't mean I don't feel country music in my heart. So today we're talking about kind of the strumming behind a lot of country music. I really respect country music in that it is probably the one genre more than anything that has upheld the tradition of guitar, which you can find in the old classics and even current stuff. So we're gonna use a Hank Williams song, Your Cheating Heart, the ultimate song to really teach a really kind of signature strumming style, and it's gonna sound like this. It might already sound kind of familiar to you. It's very simple, but there's a lot of really easy music theory that goes into it that you can incorporate into really any kind of genre that you're playing, all right? So we're gonna start with this C/G chord. This is a very important way to play it as a slash chord, right? And so basically a regular C major chord is just ring finger, 3rd fret on the A string, middle finger, 2nd fret on the D string, pointer finger, 1st fret on the B string, like that. Now C/G is where you move your ring finger to the 3rd fret on the E string and your pinky gets the 3rd fret on the A string. Now why this is important, because so much of the sound of what I think of as, country style strumming is alternating between either the root and the 5th or the root and the 3rd. So I'm gonna break this down real quick. Let's just stick on this chord, the slash chord for right now, and we want it to sound like this. Okay, just like this. Now, it might seem kind of precise the way that I'm doing it, but there's actually a lot of room for air, which is really helpful. So what I'm doing is I'm striking the root note of the chord first, which is the C on the A string, that 3rd fret that your pinky's holding down. And then I'm going down and up. 1, 2, and, okay? So if we were to count this, it would be 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And I don't want to hear you saying these down, down, up, down, up, down, up. None of that down and up nonsense. You're breaking Hank Williams' heart. Rolling in his grave if you count your strumming patterns as downs and ups. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So 1, 2, and. The 2, all the numbers are going to be downstrokes, and the word and is going to be an upstroke. So 1, 2, and. All right, so root note, that's C, and then I'm getting the higher section of the strings. I might just be aiming for like the highest 3 strings, maybe the highest 4 strings. I could hit all 6 if I really want, but we're really having that root note stick out first. 1, 2, and now the second half of the bar, 3 and 4 and, is gonna be the 5th below it, right? That's where your ring finger is on the E string, 3rd fret of the E string. Why it's called the 5th? If C is 1, C, D, E, F, G. G is the 5th of C, right? So we're alternating between C and G on the 1 count and the 3 count. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Already sounds like a classic country song strumming pattern, right? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and again, I've been playing for so long that I feel like I'm pretty good at just striking that single string almost every time. I'll say that, and then I'll probably screw it up later on. But the cool thing is you can just kind of aim for that. And if you get the A and the D string instead of just the A string, it's not a big deal. It's really more just the movement of separating maybe 1 or 2 strings on the lower end, and then getting that lazy strumming pattern, the 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You notice that I'm naturally creating a dynamic on the 2 and the 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And just by hitting more strings, it's louder, but you can also lean into that and maybe kind of hit it a little harder on that dynamic, right? 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now when I go to that 5th, I'm also hitting the and of 3, where that's not what I'm doing on that first 2 counts. I'm just getting 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. You'll notice the and of 3, it's almost kind of like a ghost note. It's like, what exactly am I playing? Nobody really knows. I'm kind of just getting a little upstroke on the and of 3. Maybe I'm getting the D in the A string. Maybe I'm actually hitting that C on the A string. I'm just kind of getting something around there. 3 and 4 and to fill out that 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and, right? And it's not super rigid. It's not 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and there's a little bit of looseness to it, right? Okay, so that's just alternating between the 1 and the 5 in a static chord. The beautiful thing about learning this is you can do this where anything. Anytime that your root note is on the A string, the 5th of it is always just gonna be right below it. You'll see this in all sorts of genres, not just country, right? So in this particular song, we're gonna go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, all right? So again, just like if G is 5, C, D, E, F, F is the 4 chord in this key. So we're gonna go from C major to F major, right? So the whole verse progression is basically 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and again to the F chord. Okay, now what I'm doing here is I'm playing a bar chord, right? You don't have to play a bar chord. We're gonna get to this both ways. But now what I'm doing when I make that switch to the 4 chord, which is always major in a key, so C major to F major, I'm striking the root note first, right? So just like I did with the C/G chord, I'm hitting that root note on the 1 count, 1, 2, and. Now, because we're already on the lowest string, we can't go to the 5th below, unless you have a 7-string guitar or something, but we can go to the 5th above it. And whenever you're on the E string, you can find the 5th above it just by grabbing 1 string higher, 2 frets down. So it's built into the chord. And then thinking of roots and 5ths and 3rds, which we're gonna get to in a second, is a great way to think about just chord building in general, right? Because there's our F, and now C, right? F, C, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 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 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now again, this is a bar chord. For beginners and intermediate players, bar chords can be tricky sometimes, especially right here in this F major chord. I'm a big fan of just playing an F major like this with the middle 4 strings, where now, in fact, let's take this from the C/G chord. You keep your pointer finger where it is and move your other 3 fingers down a fret, or a string. So now we're not even playing the high and low E strings. We're gonna mute those naturally with our hand just kind of laying down. And I just wanna get those middle 4 strings 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now we got a couple options here. We can do the same thing with the C/G chord, and then now getting the root note on the 3rd fret of the D string, and getting the 5th below it, because the same rules apply from the D string to the A string as applies from the A string to the D string. This is your root note, 3D. The 5th of that is gonna be below it. And again, our root note is F, F, G, A, B, C. So even though F is a 4th of C, C is a 5th of F. We can talk more about that when we talk about my Patreon in just a second. Basically do that same thing. Or if you want to, you could do the inverse of that. We can actually hit the root, or the 5th first, and then go 5 to 1, right? So again, here's 2 examples going from the C to the F, the root and the 5th, then the 5th and the root, the 5th and the root, or the root to the 5th, to the root to the 5th, to the root D string, 5th A string. So the difference is somewhat negligible, but you can hear it, okay? So again, this is something that still is used in modern country, even though this is like just a classic Hank Williams song. Again, if you want to learn more songs and music theory, my Patreon is actually like a really good deal because you can cancel it anytime. There's well over 100 videos. I just uploaded a modern country song lesson on a new Post Malone Morgan Wallen song, and I'm also putting another classic Hank Williams song up there tonight. So check it out. Plus, it has like your first like 60 guitar lessons in order if you really want to shore up your music theory and just get better at any genres aside from just country music. So check out the Patreon. I'll have a link in my description if you guys are interested in that. But that's just going back and forth between that C to the F, okay? The 1 chord to the 4 chord. Now the next chord is going to be a 5 chord, which we already determined that G is the 5th of C. So just like it can be a note in a C chord, C, D, E, F, G, it can be a chord in the key of C, right? C major, F major, G major, 1, 4, 5. So now let's go to a G major chord, all right? And I want to keep it with this fingering right here, because the nice thing about this is your ring finger and your middle finger never have to leave the designated frets, the 3rd fret for your ring finger and the 2nd fret for your middle finger, right? So now when I go to play a G chord, it's 3 on the E string, ring finger, 2 on the A string, middle finger, and I'm grabbing the 3rd fret on the B string with my pinky, which will change that in a second too. But now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do the same idea where I get the root note and then the A string. So it's the same pattern, has a slightly different feel to it. And the reason now is because we're alternating the root note and it's 3rd, okay? Root note, major 3rd. So that's the difference between a root note and its 5th, and a root note and its 3rd. G to D, G, D, G to B. So you can tell that there is a difference, but the vibe is pretty much the same, right? So that's why I think you can, keep the vibe the same while keeping the chords very simple, like you're doing the 5 chord here. The same strumming applies. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and that leads us back to the 1 chord. C, G, C, G. So again, the chord progression for the verses is just 1, 4, 5, 1. That whole thing repeats twice. So we can do it in order. C, G, C, G, F, C, F, C, G, B, G, B, C, G, C. I'm just calling out the root notes. Or I can do it the other way. C, G, C, F, C, F, G, D, G, D, C, G, C, G. Okay, so that's through the entire verse. Okay, aside from just this being an awesome classic Hank Williams song. Again, I wouldn't say country's my main genre, but like I love Hank Williams music so much. It just it always hits the spot. I'm always in the mood to listen to some Hank Williams, right? All right, so the cool thing about the chorus is it's set up a little bit different. It goes 4, 1, 2, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay, so again, I just kind of rifled through all the names of those chords, but it makes a lot of sense when you talk about them in relation to a key. So now we're starting the chorus on the 4 chord, C, D, E, F. All right, now we can play it bar chord, middle chord, or the middle 4, however you want to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then that goes to the 1 chord, C. This is where we have a little bit of a curveball. We go to a D7 chord, to G7. So now we're incorporating dominant 7 chords, which are still a type of major chord, just with the flat 7. Again, Patreon is gonna help walk you through all those. Now, there's really only technically 1 dominant 7 chord in a key. What's cool about this song, after we go from the 4 chord to the 1 chord, we're gonna go to the 2 chord. Remember, in the key of C, D is just 2. Now this should be a minor chord, but we're making it dominant. The music theory term for this would be a secondary dominant, a second dominant chord that's gonna lead us somewhere else, eventually to the 5 chord, right? So again, D7 from the bottom up is 2 on the E string, 1 on the B string, 2 on the G string, open on the D string. So now I'm opening up, my root note is here, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and, right? So remember, the 5th below is always right underneath it, D, A, D, A. Okay, so again, starting from the beginning of the chorus, the 4 chord, the 1 chord, the secondary dominant 2 chord leads us to G7. And again, 7 chords can always be somewhat interchangeable. You can play a regular G major if you want to play here instead of a G7. A G7 is just the same thing. 3, E, 2, A, open, 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 1 on the high E string. And then that's gonna lead us to C major, right? This is what's called in music is a 2-5-1. D is 2, G is 5, leads us back to 1, which now we go through the same progression as the verse to finish out the chorus. The one change we're gonna make for the end of the chorus, C, G, C, G, F, C, F, C, G, 7, C. Now the nice thing about 7th chords is they give us a little bit more tension to resolve. So when you're getting closer to ending either a song or a section, that would be why you might want to use a G7 chord instead of a G chord to get back to C. But again, all of this is true in any key, which again, I talk a lot about that on my Patreon. Check it out, it really helps me out a lot. But yeah, that's the whole song. So we're gonna run through it one more time. I'm gonna call out the root notes that we're striking on the chords, the entire kind of verse chorus pattern, right? So let's start at the beginning. C to G, C, G. Switch to the F chord, F, C, F, C, G, B, G, B, back to C, G. Now let's stay on this chord the second time around, and then after the C, G, we're gonna go to that middle chord, where it's the 4 in the middle on the F, G7, why not? Because we know we're going back to C, G, C, go to the chorus, F, C, F, C, back to the 1 chord. Dominant 7-2 chord, dominant 7-5 chord. That leads us back home to 1, then to 4. Let's go to the 5 as a dominant 7 chord. And then the C chord. Now again, that very last one, instead of just going C, 3, and 4, and C, 4, and I'm just gonna go C, 2, and 3, and 4, and C, G, C. Going from 1 to 5 to 1 is a great way to end a song and a great way to end this lesson. So thank you for watching. If you have any requests, anything else you'd like to see, check out. Just hit me up in the comment section. And like I said, check out the Patreon if you want to learn basically everything about guitar. Thanks for watching.